This land was undeveloped, so at first I lived without electricity, camping out in the gypsy wagon. I had lived off the grid on the Indian reservation for 14 years, and so living simply was familiar to me. The studio was built using straw bales for their environmentally friendly insulation. Most of the windows are in the south to take advantage of the winter sun heating the building with passive solar energy. When you build your own house, the process continues for many years. The project now is to generate electricity from the sun. I also plan to convert my '38 Jaguar to an electric vehicle for local trips to town on sun-powered batteries. Some of my first memories are of riding in the back seat of Lolly, my parents' 1937 Ford. I was born during the Second World War, and my military dad was training troops all over the western states. After the war, we settled in the little California town of Ojai, where at 7 years old, I had my first job selling newspapers. I started my first savings account to get a car, and by the time I was 16, I had enough to buy my first car. I see now that that was my coming of age ceremony, and it gave me the freedom to escape to the mountains or to the ocean. And my love affair of cars has lasted all my life. After college, I moved to the North Country in the pristine mountains. I began to understand how cars had really harmed the environment in California. In the northern mountains, I lived off the grid and without electricity, and I started making drawings of a sports car with an electric motor. My engineer friend said that it wouldn't work because the lead batteries are just too heavy. Years later, I started seeing articles about other people who had similar ideas and were converting cars to run on electricity with a range of 30 miles or more. Studies show that 50% of all trips are less than 20 miles, and 80% are less than 40 miles. When I decided to create my own electric car, I went online, and there was 2 or 3 of them for sale, these replicas. It was made on the East Coast. And the 100 SS was just my favorite car in the world as far as styling. Probably about 200 or 300 of them made, and they're very rare. And an original one, of course, this is a Volkswagen chassis with a fiberglass replica. And the Volkswagen chassis is a '69 Volkswagen, and the chassis is like one of the lightest weight for the strength of any car ever made. It's very, very durable. I mean, they make dune buggies out of them. They're very popular, and the old Volkswagens are so popular that it's still easy to get parts for them. Well, this body's made out of fiberglass, and so the original Volkswagen body was, of course, steel. And so really, the batteries did add some weight, but after we've taken that motor out, that was about 300 pounds, and then the gas tank that was filled with gas would be quite heavy, and then the body itself being much smaller and lighter. I think we're going to be pretty close to the original weight of the '69 Volkswagen.
The batteries are rated to put out 2,600 amps, which is a lot more than the controller can use. So it's really, even with the controllers at maximum and the engines at maximum, the batteries are just kind of tooling along, not having an issue. And we did oversize the batteries for that reason, to both get long range durability and so that they wouldn't be stressed under racing type conditions. The Zilla is rated 1,000 amps, and with an approximate 100 volt system, that is 100 kilowatts of power. And a kilowatt is about 1.3 horsepower, so you're looking at 130 horsepower, more than double the original car. And but more importantly, the torque is almost should be right around 200 foot-pounds of torque, and that's almost triple the original car. So you've got double the horsepower, triple the torque, So you've got a lot more performance than you had originally with the combustion motor. And that torque is also available right out at 0 RPM. So as soon as you put your foot in it, there's no slip in the clutch and trying to get going, it just goes. For this system, the goal is long range. So the battery has 25 kilowatt hours of energy storage, and at 30 amp 110 service, it should recharge in a little over 8 hours. It should easily recharge within a night if you plug it in. Be ready the next day for another 100 and 150 miles. And 110 goes into this, and it converts it, 110 AC, and it converts it to 110 volt DC. And the batteries all add up. There's 30 batteries, and they charge up to 3.65 volts each. And that adds up to just under 110 volts DC. We also have a DC to DC converter. It takes that 110 volt DC and it takes it down to 12 volts, which the car system, the blinkers, the lights, the brake lights, the wipers, your stereo, that all runs off 12 volt, and just like it always did. And we have a lithium 12 volt battery here, so there's no lead in the car. This is an EV Power BMS, and that is a system that looks at each of these cell modules and monitors that the batteries are within their safe range. You don't want to drain the batteries too low, and you don't want to overcharge them. And as long as they're kept within that safe range, you can run 3,000 to 5,000 charge cycles through these batteries. So they have an incredible ability of longevity. Yeah, all the batteries are connected in series here, and they act as one 96 volt battery. Each battery has a capacity of 260 amp hours, which is quite large. These are some of the largest batteries that you can get. All the cabling is quadruple aught, called 4-aught cable. It's the largest size that you can buy for a welding cable, and that has virtually no loss in the energy coming from the batteries to get back to the controller and the motor. So we use this extra size cabling, and also the large size of the bolts that come on these batteries ensures that the energy gets to where it's supposed to be without any losses. And here we have the motor, and it is an advanced DC motor. It's a series wound motor, and it's known for producing very good low end torque. So the Zilla is the controller, and it takes the juice from the batteries and puts it into the motor, and it senses your throttle input, and that's our throttle input back here. It's called a potentiometer, and that senses how much you're pressing on the throttle pedal, and it distributes the energy to the motor to make the car go. Zilla puts out 1,000 amps is the rating, and it's on a air-cooled IGBT heatsink. We actually cut it in half. It was an enormous heatsink for in a server room, and it has dual 54 millimeter computer fans on the back there that are a little bit difficult to see, and it also has a liquid cooling system. We have an aquarium pump and a small 12 volt pump, and we have a reservoir up here, radiator back here, and it has also has a computer cooling fan that's adjustable there. The airstream goes right into that, flows through that and cools it, and then it also has a fan, so if you were, let's say, stuck in traffic for more cooling or whatnot. This is a tachometer. It's a inductive proximity sensor, which basically just is electromagnet that senses anytime a ferrous object goes by it. And so we have this reluctor ring here that will rotate, and as it goes by this, it creates a pulse, just like your cylinder firing in a ignition system for gas. And that goes into the Zilla and into the tachometer, so the gauge on the dash works just like it always did. So the Zilla also limits the RPMs, and right now I can set it at whatever I want, but I have it set to just over 5,000 RPMs, just as a nice soft rev limit. So even if you put your foot on the pedal and left it there in neutral, it would only rev up to about 5,200 and just hold there. The really only maintenance part on this type of motor is the brushes, and those are what make contact with the rotor on the motor. Those do need to be changed periodically, maybe every 80,000 miles or so, but they're not
I mean, it's a fairly simple operation, and it's not a major deal.
And I'm an artist by trade, so I had to put the lightning bolt in there because it's just part of the way I do things. The name is Sunjag, so I had to put a sun there. I want my little touch of artwork. Yeah, and there's my logo that I put in all my jewelry pieces: lightning bolt, the moon, and the star. So I consider this an art piece as well as a vehicle of transportation.
Definitely.
When I got interested in really starting this project and getting a car and buying some batteries and things, I went online to see what was available, in information, and found out that there are hundreds of people all across the country converting cars. With the development of lithium batteries, the range is increasing, and we have designed our Sunjag to have a range of 100 miles. I studied the history of electric cars and saw that the technology had been obstructed by the predatory business practices because gas cars just produce larger profits. My Native American teachers have taught me that we must not do anything that will harm the children or their children for 7 generations. This is something that I can do. This is something I can personally do to make a change. We can do this from the grassroots. We can do this as a community of people wanting to do something better. But with the first drive in the Sunjag, it was well worth all the time and work. And the fact that I've connected mine to my solar cells on the roof, you're literally driving on the sun's energy. Driving in silence, producing no pollution, was a wonderful and liberating feeling. It reminds me of my youth and how much fun driving used to be.
Atlantis lies in the ocean deep. Memories of Pangea sleep. Seed of the Maya and the Egyptian. Flash forward with me if you can.
We got a car.
As above, so below. The tides arrive in clockwork sets. Remember the future now, don't forget. Flash forward.